Hello, everyone. My name is Marissa. I use she or they pronouns, and I work here at the Kenneth Young Center. I'm also in charge of the Rainbow Room YAC here, and it has been a really fantastic and challenging year to navigate kind of the challenges that a lot of young people are dealing with when it comes to COVID-19. And as we're gearing up towards the new school year, we've been listening to the students, their concerns, what they're anxious about, and maybe some of the solutions that they think of when they think about these concerns. So if I could have everyone with me today introduce themselves one by one, we'll go down the line. Arya, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Arya Shah. I go by she, her pronouns, and I go to James B. Conant High School, and I'm an incoming junior. And then one thing I missed about in-school learning was just like getting to see and meet new people and kind of like have that like face-to-face relationship with your peers and teachers.
Thank you. All right, Faith, hi.
Hi, my name is Faith Massey. I use she, her pronouns as well. I'm actually an alumnus of James B. Conant High School, which is like not real, but I'm forced to, face it. And the biggest thing that I probably miss is building genuine connections. Like don't get me wrong, over, technology, but it's nothing like being in person. When you and that teacher are asking questions and you're getting deep into it, or that teacher helps you through something very challenging, I think it's a chemical reaction that happens. And I don't know, that was one of the best parts of school for me.
Thank you. Last and certainly not least.
Hi guys, my name is Lucia and my pronouns are she, her. I'm going to be an upcoming senior at William Fremd High School. And one of my favorite memories of in-school learning, it's kind of similar to both Arya and Faith's. It's kind of just like small talk in a way. It's very hard to kind of make light conversation or just say, oh, how was your weekend? And actually have that full-on conversation over Zoom or a breakout room. So I guess that's just something that I miss a lot.
Yeah, thank you all so much for sharing. And thank you all so much for being here. I know that some of us are getting ready to either go off to college or, return to in-person learning. And there's kind of a lot of concerns, a lot of questions that are going on. So I wanted to talk to you all today about what some of those concerns might look like or might be. So my first question for you all today is that the transition to back to school learning will probably be challenging for some students in different aspects. But what are some of the things that you as students are most anxious or concerned about?
I could start. I think I'm most nervous about like burnout. I think I really got used to like having 4 classes a day, like less homework, meaning more time to study, and I just feel that like it really made me like it made my work ethic go down a lot, and I was able to like play video games and like watch movies on the weekdays, which isn't something I normally did. So I'm worried about the transition back to like a full 8 periods every day and having a lot of tests and homework. So I'm just hoping I don't burn out too quickly this year, but I think that's what I'm most like anxious for.
Yeah,
Yes.
if I could just piggyback off of that, I really agree with Arya because I realized that it wasn't just remote learning for me, it was kind of the summer. And I realized that even though I had like a part-time job and an internship and everything, I just wasn't as anxious. It was a lot to do and a lot to handle, but inside, deep down, I wasn't so stressed about school or my academics. And that's what I'm most like worried about when we go back to in person because we're going to have so much time to do homework and study and prepare for tests, and a lot of anxiety comes with that. So yeah, that's just something that I'm a little bit concerned with.
Thank you. Definitely. I think I can even relate to that about, enjoying some of the luxuries that we could have while working from home. So I think a lot of students can definitely relate to that sentiment. My second question for all of you is, where do students need the most support when they'll be back to school? Where are some of the gaps in that support that is needed?
I think that emotional support is going to be like a huge thing this year because we have kids coming into high school who haven't been in school since sixth grade, and like normally, or seventh grade, sorry, but like normally your eighth grade year, you'd have the school tour, and it would be like a smoothless transition, or like a smooth transition from eighth grade to high school, but kids don't really have that, so they're coming into a whole new environment, a school that they don't know, and now they have to adjust to like the homework and just the school environment. They're just learning all these new things, and I think it's really going to be stressful for freshmen and sophomores. And um in saying that, like, I think that it would be important for upperclassmen to kind of step up and help younger students, as well as teachers to help younger students. But I think a big gap there is that, like, younger students don't have many classes with upperclassmen, and like teachers are going to be so busy teaching lessons that there's not going to be time to like make sure that everyone's fitting in. So I think that it would be really important for like mentors and teachers to have things like Google Forms or support groups to kind of help make sure that everyone's fitting in properly, just because the transition is going to be so difficult this year.
I wholeheartedly agree. And I kind of want to piggyback, but in a different way. I think grace, patience, and understanding. Because at the end of the day, we're all human. And I think the biggest thing that I found valuable during the pandemic, was some teachers that felt comfortable enough, during our one-on-one time, told me how they were struggling. And that just made it so much more comforting, because it's like, as students, we're struggling, we're missing assignments, it looks like we don't care. Like Lucia said last time, that's completely not true. Some students have to have home issues they have to deal with. Like, it's just so much. But then to know, like, okay, my teacher's struggling in their own ways too, but they still come every day and they teach us, or they're extending a helping hand, or they have understanding. So when we go into the transition and we're back to in person, we have less distractions. It's like maybe even having like a healing time. What is that? Community care. Let's talk about how you struggle. You do not have to talk about everything, because that is perfectly okay. But if you had to say one thing you struggle with, boom, it can be like a whole step up activity. If you struggled with fatigue, step up. And it just shows that everybody is really together, and we all experience similar things, and we're all conscientious of that. So moving forward, we're going to support one another. It's not just on the teachers, but it's on the students as well. But it's on the teachers to formulate that accepting environment. And that's what I really, really, really want teachers to do. And I think it's going to really invest and help the students.
Yeah, I agree with both of you guys like so much. I think that it like the way I kind of perceive this question is like the gaps in the school system is twofold, right? There's kind of a gap between the upperclassmen and the lowerclassmen, like Arya said, because I realize now that as an upcoming senior, I have never seen the freshmen or the sophomores like face to face ever. And now that we're going back to school, we won't even recognize them. When I was a sophomore and we were in-person learning, I kind of knew, like, even though I didn't know all the upperclassmen, I kind of knew these like familiar faces I could talk to. But now, like, there's an actual physical gap between the upperclassmen and lowerclassmen. And I feel like we need to kind of congregate together and have a bigger connection for the school, because we are all going through such a hard time transferring back to in-person, that if we all kind of did this together and knew that we weren't alone, it would just be a lot more smoother. And the other side of it is definitely like the connection between the students and the teachers, right? Because over Zoom or even in the summer, we barely had any personal connections with the students. And teachers would just teach their curriculum and then say, all right, like the bell has rung, you guys can leave. And so everyone would leave. And there was nothing like there was no how was your day, or like I wonder what were your plans for this weekend. And I think that a very big I feel like a very good idea is to kind of build that personal connection. And maybe a really good idea could be like doing these self-reflection questions. Like every week we can do like a little bit of a Google form, or it could just even be a piece of paper that asks you questions. Like it could be a scale, like on a scale from 1 to 10, how are you feeling today? Or is there anything that you're looking forward to? Is there anything that you're concerned with? And just so when teachers read the responses, they'll know like each individual student a lot better and build that closer connection with them.
I want to add on quickly. I see a lot of teachers, and this is just me being brutally honest. It's like they do those forms and they just do it just to say that they did it. Like, look, I connected with my students, da 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 da. And even for the teachers, I'm gonna give you the benefit of doubt that are taking that into consideration. I think what's most important too is show the students that they see that you read it. So whether that's, don't talk to them in person, be like, hey, senior, like you don't have to do that, but be very intentional and overt, not too overt, but overt about the ways that you're like, okay, I noticed a bunch of us did this, so we're having peacetime or whatever that looks like for you. Just show that you've seen it and that you're making actionable decisions based off of it.
I agree. I had my chem teacher last year, he would do surveys kind of like that, just like checking in with everyone. And it felt a lot more meaningful when he would email us being like, oh, I saw that you're doing this weekend. Have a great time. Or like, let me know how this goes. It felt a lot more like in person where you're actually establishing a relationship with your teacher. And it's just like, it's a small little step. It's not something that takes too much out of your day.
Thank you. Thank you. Definitely the action is important when it comes to these kinds of, themes we've been talking about, community and connection. And while that is pretty hard virtually, if we are able to find that community and find those connections, we often tend to see students thrive much more. So thank you so much, all of you. And yeah, thank you for coming up, also speaking about that accountability and that action part as well. My next question for you all is, what do you want teachers and supportive adults to know about when it comes to students returning to in-person learning? So these can be teachers, supportive adults, counselors. What should they know about being a student when it comes to returning in person?
How was that? Oh,
Sorry, go ahead, go ahead.
are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. This is actually one of my favorite questions, and I've been noodling on this one for like a fat moment, okay? And I realized, like, due to my own personal experiences or hearing my peers, there's almost like this duality, right? So I really want you to follow me. Some students experience safety in schools, while others experience hardships at home. Now, on the flip side, some students experience hardships in school while they experience safety at home. For instance, at school, they could have a bully, or they could have anxiety, or they can be doubtful, et cetera, et cetera. But at home, they don't got to worry about none of that. The other way around, some people might have certain home situations that make them very stressful, while at school, they get to escape. They get to go to their activities, they can immerse themselves and stimulate their minds, et cetera, et cetera. So understand that no matter how you personally feel about going back into school, there's someone that is nervous. There's someone that is happy. So be approachable and understand, like, don't assume what the student is going through, but be conscientious on your day-to-day practices within your school day.
I definitely agree. When I was thinking about this, I kind of thought about it in the way of like me being a freshman. And I think one thing that adults may or may not realize is that, like, as a young kid coming into a new school with a bunch of new people, it's really hard to reach out. And it sucks that we have to take that first step and be like, hey, I need help, because obviously there's no other way to identify that you need help, but it's something that not everyone's comfortable with, and not everyone is like, I don't know, some people are just like scared to do it. So, kind of going along with what Faith said, make sure that you're approachable, do things to kind of show the community that you care, because a lot more people are going to be willing to open up. Or also just make it that students don't have to open up on their own. You can go and ask them, like with those Google Forms, was just like making sure people are okay by emailing them. It makes the process a lot easier and it gains trust. And that, like, my teachers emailing me first really helped me to like talk about what I needed and how I was struggling, and it just helped me a lot more in the long run. And especially this year, I think that's something that's going to be really important.
Yeah, I agree with both of you guys. I feel like one things that teachers need to know is that this whole like transition is a process and it's slow, you know, it's not going to be like, oh, we're just suddenly going to shift our mind from summer and from COVID all the way to like taking tests all of a sudden, doing assignments like immediately at home and not procrastinating and being extremely productive. So I believe that leniency is really important for teachers to understand. And something that I realized is when we were on Zoom, we could we don't have to participate. It was super, super um, just voluntary, right? And you could just press the button and raise your hand, and then the teacher would call on you. However, when you're in person, it's so much harder. It's such a simple action, just raising your hand, right? But to a lot of people, like they get sweaty palms, they get like a really fast heartbeat from it because it can be very nerve-wracking to ask a question or to answer a question. And I feel like it would be kind of a little bit more difficult if teachers peer pressured them and pressured them in a way where like, oh, I feel like you guys are just so used to Zoom, none of you guys are participating, and then call out a random person's name. I think that although it is good to have a conversation, teachers need to be more patient with these students because we experienced more than a year locked in our rooms and using only the internet to kind of communicate with other people. It's going to be a really big difference going in person and asking these questions. So I think that it's best if teachers understand that it's not going to be as easy as it can be. I remember one time during Zoom, one of my teachers, obviously I can't say who, but she whenever she called out a person's name and they didn't answer, she would be like, "Oh, I'm gonna kick them out, like they're leaving the class." So I hope that as we transition back to school, there's going to be a lot more teachers who understand that it's very difficult for us physically, emotionally, and academically to do this transition. And teachers are also going to have a hard time. So if they realize the stress they're feeling, they should know that we're feeling the exact same stress.
Thank you. I think that is so important, especially what you said at the end. If you feel like this returning back to school is a struggle, even as students, then you can surely empathize with teachers that it could be stressful for them. And yeah, seeing that kind of the other way around as well. That was beautifully said. My last question for you all today is what are you looking forward to for when you return to school?
I think I'm just really excited to see people again. Like, during COVID, I live with my grandma, so I wasn't going out, I wasn't seeing people. I just started hanging out with people, but I got so socially like anxious from not seeing people that like I was sweating and I got red and like I was stuttering and it was bad. And like even being here doing this, it's like me trying to push myself because I know like I'm a social person and I'm like easygoing, and I've kind of like lost that part of myself through the pandemic, but I'm really excited to like get back into that and like see people and like have those class inside jokes and just like all the fun parts of high school that were kind of lost last year. I'm really excited to experience those again this year.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think one thing I'm really looking forward to is definitely seeing people and familiar faces and even like new faces, right? And making new friends because it's so difficult to make friends over Zoom, right? Like if there was a new kid that came from another school and just like was an incoming sophomore or junior, like they would know nobody because you can't really build that connection over a screen. So I think making new friends is something I'm really excited about. And also just walking around the class, walking around the school. This is my last year at Fremd, and it's gonna be super nostalgic, you know? I'm gonna go in. We already have like these senior t-shirts we're gonna wear, and it's just nice, like instead of sitting for 4 hours, we actually get to like walk around the hallways, see like teachers that we had in the past and make conversation with them, and just be in like a social environment again just seems a lot more exciting.
Thank you all so, so much. Um, Again, a huge thank you for, sharing your time, your thoughts, your opinions with me. Also would like to give a big thank you to Elk Grove and the District 211 schools for even asking for this video. And I think that does show that they recognize that this will also be, a pretty challenging time for students. So it's really awesome that they want to hear from us and, hear ideas from young people who have some pretty good ideas of how to change things to make it more comfortable and easiest for students to return. So big thank you to them. A big thank you to you lovely ladies. And I hope you all have an excellent, excellent beginning of your school year and no COVID to report. So thank you all so, so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Maria. Thanks.